Fatigue isn't always a lack of sleep. It's often a signal that something in your system is being misread. Even though your brain only makes up a small fraction of your entire body weight, it uses about 20% of the total energy our body produces every day. So when something inside the body begins to strain the system, the brain is often one of the first places that strain shows up. That's why feeling tired doesn't always simply mean that you just need more rest. It can mean that your body is responding to something that you haven't recognized yet. I'm Dr. Kenny, an IFM certified functional medicine practitioner, and patterns just like this when it comes to fatigue are often where the investigation begins. So if you're feeling tired more often than you think you should be, especially when you're doing a lot of the right things, that's worth paying attention to. Not because fatigue tells you exactly what's wrong, but because it suggests something in the system isn't being interpreted correctly in how your energy is being siphoned. Fatigue is a signal, not a diagnosis itself. And the goal here when it appears isn't to necessarily jump straight to conclusions, it's to start asking more precise questions about what your body is actually responding to. And if we reframe fatigue as this signal, the real question becomes, why does ignoring it seem to work until it doesn't? For a lot of people, especially high performers, pushing through fatigue isn't unusual. It's something that's actually commonplace and even championed. It's part of how many of us have learned to function in this society. You have responsibilities, expectations, work demands, internal standards, and you find a way to meet them. The body is designed to support this in the short term, ultimately. Your stress responses can actually temporarily increase your alertness, sharpen your focus, and help you keep going even when your energy feels low or you're pouring from the proverbial empty cup, whether you perceive it or not. So you have the coffee, the afternoon pick-me-up, and from the outside, everything still looks like it's working and functioning fine. But internally, at the chemistry level, something different is happening here. Your body is constantly allocating energy, prioritizing some functions while quietly down-regulating others. And the fact that you can still perform often gets misread as everything functioning normally, but it may not be. That's where many people often misread what's happening, sometimes for years or even decades. Over time, those adjustments, those overpourings accumulate, not dramatically, especially at first, but as a gradual shift in how you feel, how you recover, and how much margin you actually have day to day. So the more useful question here isn't whether or not you can push through, but it's better reframed as, what is your body adapting to while you push through? Because those adaptations are driven by signals. And understanding those signals is where we can start to leverage what fatigue is actually pointing to. To make sense of these signals, we have to shift in how we think about energy production itself, not just as something your body produces, but as something your body regulates based on what it's expecting. One of the most important shifts here is realizing that energy isn't just something that your body produces like a simple machine. It's also something your body upregulates and downregulates. Your cells may have the raw materials to produce energy, but the output can still change depending on the signals, the environment, coming in from the rest of the system. That includes stress chemistry, hormone signaling and resilience, inflammatory signals, and your nervous system tone. Lots of different angles here. This includes whether or not your body is reacting to the environment and seeing it as relatively safe and regulated, or as something it needs to be constantly adapting to. This is where your mitochondria come into the conversation. They essentially take food and oxygen and turn it into energy, or ATP, but they don't operate in isolation. And in fact, a recent systematic review in Psychosomatic Medicine Journal found that psychological stress can meaningfully downregulate energy production and affect mitochondrial function. In plain language, this just means that your energy systems are responsive to the inputs that we see both internally and in our environments. Which means that fatigue itself is not just about an output mismatch. It's about interpretation of signals body-wide too. So if your system is consistently getting the message that it needs to stay vigilant or conserve resources, or even adapt to ongoing cumulative demand, fatigue may not reflect a lack of capacity. It may, in fact, reflect an intelligent and regulated reduction in output. And if those signals are shaping your energy output across the body, it makes sense that one of the first places that you notice it is in the organ that uses so much of our energy, the brain. It is one of the most energy demanding organs that we have, constantly processing, predicting, filtering, and trying to keep up with your functioning in real time. Many people report brain fog or feeling fatigued, whether physically or mentally. This can look like irritability in some people or lower motivation, feeling just mentally slower than usual. And this is part of why fatigue gets misinterpreted. It's not always just a physical experience. It's often cognitive first and subtle. That's why you can feel off before anything looks wrong on paper or conventional labs. A 2024 human study recently published found that psychosocial experiences were linked with measurable differences in the brain's energy-related machinery. What they found is that life experiences and stress load don't just affect how you feel. They can shape how your brain also allocates and accesses energy potential. So what this means is that fatigue is certainly not just in your head, and rather it represents oftentimes a systems-wide strain. And once you see that, another pattern starts to make a lot more sense too, especially in people who continue functioning at a very high level long after their body has started asking for something different. One pattern that can show up here, and I want to be careful not to overgeneralize, is a gradual desensitization to your own internal signals. This tends to show up in people who are very capable, responsible, high achievers, or used to carrying a lot. Sometimes that looks like high performance. Sometimes it reflects a long history of internal pressure, external demand, or limited room to slow down in life. Over time, the issue isn't always a simple collapse of the system. It's this adaptation. When you get used to overriding hunger or sleep signals or emotional strain that's relatively consistent, or the need to pause, because our systems will keep functioning and keep pushing through, that adaptation starts to look and feel normal. Many people have this incredible capacity to push through these energy ceilings, but what's happening underneath is this slow desensitization to self. And it may start to very slowly sneak in as reduced input or margins or lower resilience, brain fog, more reactability again, where you're functioning but maybe not at the same high performing capacity. So the pattern to notice isn't just black and white, I'm running on great energy or exhaustion. It's to start tuning into the nuance that exists in our cognitive and physical energy systems. And that's where a very simple metaphor helps, because most cases that I see with my patients don't just break down from a single event. They've often quietly built up over time because of increased demand when finally one particular demand tips the scale. This is where the phrase, the straw that breaks the camel's back, becomes very useful when it applies to stress chemistry, fatigue, and lost resilience. Most people don't become profoundly fatigued from one bad night of sleep or one difficult week. More often, it's the accumulation, months or years of pushing through subtly or pouring from that proverbial empty cup and adapting and desensitizing, continuing without full recovery. In the research, this is described as allostatic load, or the cumulative wear and tear or body burden from repeated stress and repeated adaptation. In plain terms, the system just keeps track of what it's been asked to absorb over time. And by the way, if you're one who likes the research, I've included a free research summary. It's easy to digest and includes some of the articles that I used to create this particular video, so check it out. So you can see when we talk about allostatic load that the question isn't always what changed overnight, but rather what's been building over time. When a patient walks in and says, I was fine until suddenly I wasn't, it usually isn't sudden when we really do a deep dive into the history, which is a huge strength strength of functional medicine. It's the point where the system can no longer mask the cost or the imbalance between your resources and your output as effectively. This is why the symptom of fatigue matters, not because it tells you exactly what causes it. It's a very non-specific symptom, but rather it tells us, and is often one of the earlier points where this accumulation becomes more noticeable. If there's one shift to take away from this, it isn't to panic or chase every possible explanation for fatigue. It's to start noticing the pattern more accurately and more sensitively. Once fatigue is no longer treated as something to just simply override or power through, but rather a conversation with yourself and with your body, it becomes a more useful source of information. Here are some additional questions you may ask yourself to tease out some detail. When does your energy drop? What makes it worse? What gives a temporary lift or a boost when you do feel it? And what actually restores your capacity in a big way? Do you notice more fatigue after stressful moments, poor sleep, or several days of overwriting or work demands or family stressors? Are you still functioning but feel like you have less margin than you used to have? Each of those distinctions matter. It's kind of taking out the fatigue from the body and looking at it from multiple different angles. This is where you will often see the patterns that become more visible. And the earlier you can start to recognize these quiet signals, the less your systems have to amplify them to get your attention in the long run. So here's the shift to keep in mind. Fatigue isn't always about simply needing more sleep or more discipline. It's often your system asking for a different kind of attention. The goal is to treat it as a clue that something about your energy input, your energy output, or the way your system is regulating itself, both may need to be examined more deeply. So instead of buzzing around the societal pressures and answering the question, how do I push through this? The more useful, deeper, sensitive question is, what is my body responding to? And what has it been costing me to ignore it? If this helps you to see fatigue as this cost signal, the next question is, what happens when your system doesn't get real opportunity for recovery? And that's exactly what this video here on your screen explores, especially how sustained output can quietly reduce resilience over time. If you want to understand why rest is more biological than motivational, check out this one. I'm Dr. Kenny, Root Cause Health Detective. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.